welcome to Poleshift News. Guys, I wish I could say the fundraiser was going much better than it is, but the fact is, I think we're on about £27, and we can only hope that it gets better. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on. What I wanted to talk about in this video was, how do you know when the right time is to act? And, with what we're faced, I bet a lot of you people thinking probably the same thing. When do you know? And I think you've got to rely on your gut instinct. I'm going to cover a few of the things that sort of lead to the fact that, at some point, something definitely needs to be done. We all need to act at some particular point. Like I said, we do know the train's coming down this track. We're actually on the track at the moment, and, we need to think to ourselves, when do we take evasive action? Now, I'll just give you, for instance, because I think it makes a point. A few years ago, about 7 years ago, I had a small business, and 9 months into this business, it was in the summer. I can't remember what year it was, but it's irrelevant anyway. But I was putting everything back into the business. I wasn't taking a wage out of it, and I employed around 4 people. And it suddenly dawned on me, that my business was affected by the weather. We couldn't do the groundworks. If the rain, we had a lot of rain, and you just couldn't put a 360 on the ground because it would just turn it into mud. So when we had days like that, I pretty much paid the guys that I was employing at the time to sit around. Or if we had another job that required some carpentry, we'd go back to the factory unit and we'd get on with whatever we could. But it wasn't every day that I was able to go back to the factory and do something else with the lads. So I'd end up having to pay them a wage, and then you're not doing no work, you're not earning no money, and it becomes very frustrating. But it dawned on me, that we was coming towards the end of the summer and going into the winter, and the weather was going to change a lot more. And I decided, I've been thinking about, to find the wages for, around £2,000 worth of wages, then another £600 or £700 for the factory, as well as other running costs of the business. I thought, it's probably a good idea to sell what I've got now, and at least I can take what I've got in assets, machinery and stuff, out of the business, and I can walk away with something. And this is something very few people do in business. And there's a real good point I want to make here with what our governments do. But very quickly, what a lot of people do is they start to borrow money off banks in the periods of times where they're not able to make income. There's still a good business there, but what they tend to do is borrow or sell some of their assets. Now, I've seen this happen quite a few times, and what usually ends up being the case is the person that owns the company, when they get into this situation, ends up with nothing, and sometimes even deeper and deeper in the red. So I managed to sell off the assets, and I took a small lump sum out of the business. But I purely went on instinct and having a bit of foresight about what was lying ahead and where I didn't want to go. And I think, when I get back now to making the point with the governments, we can see that they're already in that stage. When you see your country having to print up money and then at the same time introduce austerity measures, you know that the country's bankrupt. And I've had this confirmed a few times. Recently, I was offered a job a couple of weeks ago working for a financial company, but I had to move to Dubai in order to do that, and I didn't want to have to go all the way over there and, find accommodation. It's not as easy as what people think. And of course there was a long period of training, and I'd have to virtually support myself, while I was there. And it's, I want to stay in the country I'm at the moment. I don't want to relocate just because of work's there. But the point is this: when we see our governments doing these things, we know that it's only a matter of time before they have to admit it, that they're bankrupt. When they're printing up cash, and doing it often, what they're doing is actually a short-term fix for the solution. So economically, you know, it's not just the UK that has done this. Europe's got a bit of a problem with this because they've took the printing presses off a lot of the countries and they can't do it. But in this incidence with the UK, it is bankrupt, and by printing money, it just adds more money to the system, which makes then everything more expensive because, you know, when something becomes more readily available, it obviously attracts a lesser value. It's like gold, if you get what I mean. There's not a lot of gold about, the value of gold goes up. If there's plenty of gold about, the value of gold goes down. And this is the case. So my point is this, guys. You know, we know that in the Western world now, the economic forum, if you like, has collapsed, and it's being propped up by printed money. And they've done this many times. And, you know, it's not just that, it's the debts of the countries. If you look at the United States, it's got problems with debts. You know, if the grand total debt was placed on each person, it would be a colossal amount. And, you know, there's another thing there, guys. You know, just adding to the problems of the capital system falling apart in the Western worlds, we have other big superstate countries like Russia suddenly emerging now as a predominant player on the global market, and they're going to be in the same situation as China was probably 10 or 20 years ago. And, you know, the last thing that the West wants, I think, is a strong Russia, you know, playing a global market. And I think that's what we're seeing a lot of, you know, to and fro's between America and the UK and Russia. And I think there's a lot of it to do with Syria as well. I think it's all to do with corporate, you know, not corporate funding, but corporate business. You know, we're seeing wars, and we have done for a long time, wars started over corporate interests, which is a bad thing. But the point is, what I wanted to say to you guys is, look, you know, I've probably given you a few examples, right? I mean, we've just touched on, you know, the economy, having the intuition to make a decision when you need to, so that you're in a better shape to carry on, as opposed to running everything out, waiting for some situation to occur, and then finding you've got nothing, no assets, no resources around you. So, you know, perhaps now is the time to just put some of those things up. I'm not talking about, you know, stashing food, even though that is a good idea, or just stashing something that gives you then, in a given situation, the opportunity to act. Maybe a rainy day fund, maybe it might be some gold or silver or something like that along those lines. I think now more than ever it's a good time to have those things that if you need to, in a short notice, you can put your hand on and quickly convert them into something that you need at that point. The other thing is, guys, and we've got to face this, there's 7 billion people on this planet, and as a result of that, with the technological advancement, it has meant that the workforce has become so surplus that it's lowered the value of labour. Again, in a capitalist system, it's not good. If you can only get a job that pays low wage, regardless of your education, your background and experience, it's not going to be great times. So this is something else you need to think about. Maybe, you know, relocating might be right for you. If it means, you know, you can foresee you're going to be in this situation for another 10 years, then, you know, if relocation is going to give you the opportunity to, you know, have a better quality of life, then maybe that's another thing you need to think about. What I'm trying to say there, guys, is that we know we're going into a grand solar minimum. It's going to change the climate on this planet. And we're already seeing crop failures. And they will become more frequent. And it's not quite clear yet where is the best place to go on this planet. I've not, you know, said to myself, well, you know, if this happens, I'll probably want to be there. And the thing is as well, guys, you know, if you've got an idea after weighing up all those things of where you want to be, given a given situation, then you're probably not going to be the only ones that have thought of it. You might arrive there thinking you got early, but you might realise you've got there late because there are already millions of people that have got there before you. The thing is with this, if we're going to the glacial period, most of the northern hemisphere probably will go offline at some point, simply because agriculture will go offline, food will go through the roof, and people are going to start mass migrating at that point in time. Over how long a period have we got before this happens? Well, all I can say is we are seeing, arable lands go offline already that support this northern westerly part of the world. Glacial periods usually cover a big chunk of the northern hemisphere, but I will say this, we was in a glacial period, we were just coming out of the glacial period 11,000 years ago, but what we wasn't going through was a magnetic reversal, so we've got the two things to think about here. I've always said this, it's not just a case of grand solar minimum causing problems. When you get a weakening magnetosphere, it affects the magnetic poles, and the magnetic poles regulate the jet streams on this planet. And that's something a lot of scientists haven't probably worked out yet, but it's by no coincidence that these jet streams form horizontal to the vertical dipoles on this planet. And, I've always said this, the three things that are in the Arctic and Antarctic Circle are rotational axis, magnetic dipole, and Arctic climates. Now, if one starts to move, I dare say the other one's going to start to move at some point. And like I say, you've always got to bear this at the back of your mind, guys, that we are 500,000 years overdue another magnetic reversal. So something slowed down in the core. Maybe it's something to do with the slowing down of the magneto in a similar way that happened to Mars. And if that's the case, it doesn't matter, because the end result is going to be terminal for this planet. All biodiversity will go offline. So, just a few things to bear in mind, guys.
So, first of all, I've got to apologise for the sound quality in the beginning of this video. That was because, and I claim to be a scientist, can you believe that? I'd got the microphone jack in the earphone, and, I never write a script for what I want to say. I usually just, get on a topic and flow with it. So, just apologies. I've just realised that the microphone is not plugged in the proper socket, but it is now, obviously, guys. So the point is this. I just want to, round up a few things that we've talked about. I think what you've got to do is look at the data that you've been following. For some of you guys, I know it's been a few years on this channel. Make a decision yourselves. How likely is this to be affecting you in the short-term future, maybe the mid-term future and the long-term future? And then, what I want to encourage you to do is probably, start to think of some contingency plans for your family. If you think putting up a bit of food now, a couple of sacks of rice or something like that, or just something staple to see you through a period of time, where, if those things do start to happen, the shops start to clear out of all the stuff, at least you've got that. But have you got also the other things as well? Have you got a means to protect your family? Have you got some assets that you can change, like gold and silver? Those sort of things. And have you got an idea of where you want to be given a situation? If you're in the northern hemisphere and you can see that region is probably going to become harder and harder and harder, and if you relocate yourself somewhere further south, perhaps the equatorial region, if you think that that's going to be the best place for you, are you going to do it now, or are you going to wait 10 more years before you, like I said, are you going to struggle through them 10 years and then say, oh, come on, I'm going, I've had enough of this? Now's the time to start making them plans. I think that's the purpose of this video. We know what's happening. The Earth is going through some dramatic changes never witnessed before by humans. I'm talking about first and foremost the main one, which is the responsible for a lot of the climate problems we've got now. That is the magnetic reversal. We also have our sun going through a grand solar minimum. And we know this, guys. We've looked at all the ice core data on this channel recently. You know, I've showed you. We know the planet's going through a magnetic reversal. We've seen that happening over the last 100 years. So, and we also know that the economic climate is changing as well regarding our capitalist system. And we can see that labour's in surplus amounts, and that, you know, you might want to think about this. Because it's an important thing. Some of you guys might be employed and have a real good job which pays really good money, but the problem is, how long is that going to last, and can you recover another job in short notice should you need to? Because this is going to be critical for a lot of people. You know, we're seeing well paid or reasonably well paid people in the UK now losing their properties because they haven't been able to make the mortgage payments because they've been out of work. And I'll just give you, for instance, I know somebody who is a recruitment agency for banking, and they say it's about 2 years. If a banker loses his job, it takes around 2 years for him to find another job that he had, and it might still not be as well paid as what he had before. So just bear that in mind. You know, you might be a professional in a certain field. If you lose that job, have you got the resources to sustain you till you can probably recover the job? And even you can't recover that job, what is going to be your plans? And, you know, just bear that in mind, what I said about, you know, the business, because I think we can apply that to a household. You know, do you want to lose the lot? Or are you prepared to take something now, take that little something with you, or are you prepared to lose the lot at the longer run? You know, I think this is the perfect situation for everything that we're experiencing. I think what you've got to do is go on your gut instinct, but what I'm trying to get you guys to do is just realise the fact that it probably is a time now to start talking about these things with your immediate family and your extended family as well. It's time to start bringing these people online with what they're facing in the future, because, guys, don't wait for a handout off your government. It's never going to happen. You know, the government is just about keeping themselves afloat in the western parts of these worlds. It's not an economic expansion. We're seeing quite the opposite. We're seeing companies in the UK, just for instance, that have been around for 100 years going bankrupt. You know, the internet has changed everything about the way we do business now. And, you know, if you're a high street shop, you've got to pay rates, rent, staff, everything. You compare that to an internet business, and there's none of that. So you have to bear all this in mind. You know, the guys that are at the top running everything, they are very acutely aware of where and how to dodge the loopholes in the system. And as a result of that, I mean, I'll just give you an example. Amazon, you know, just paying the government £25 million in taxes when their earnings are in the billions. You know, that they're avoiding it because they're an offshore business and they're avoiding the tax. And, you know, other companies that are well established on the internet are doing that. And, you know, this is not good for any economy. You know, this is not how the capitalist system was originally set up to work. You know, the capitalist system, as you know, guys, is failed. It failed from the point where technology took over the majority of the jobs, population kept increasing, and now we are here where we are. And yeah, I've just thought of one other important thing I want to just bring to your awareness. You know, there's a lot of talk about cloud seeding, and that can do two things. It can make it rain in certain regions, and it can also dry up those clouds so it doesn't rain. You know that the technology exists for both of these things. They can stop rain happening, and they can increase the rain that's happening. But my point is this, guys. It might not be a bad thing in the future, because it already is the case for a lot of farmers. When they want certain weather for their crops, otherwise they're going to lose the whole lot, they will resort, even today, to paying these companies, and there are plenty of these companies out already. You know, get to grips with this, guys. Cloud seeding is a business now, global business, and it's going to become an even bigger global business. I'm not particularly all for it, because I think it's tampering with nature. But you know, in the cases where it comes down to growing crops so that we get food in the shops, cloud seeding could be a good thing, and weather modification could be a good thing. Yes, it could be a bad thing when you look at some of the chemicals they're using now. I know for a fact there is a technology available already, and nobody seems to be talking about this, which is probably not what we want more of at the moment, but it's ionisation in specific regions which makes it rain. Now, ionisation can be done without the use of any chemicals whatsoever, and it can be modified to any aircraft whatsoever, and it's just produces iron particles in the atmosphere the same way as what we get when we get this inbound radiation from our sun and outside our solar system. So, you know, the point is this, is it doesn't contaminate the land using that, and I don't think that they've quickly came about the understanding of how to use that technology, but it does exist, trust me guys. It's a similar technology to what I was going to suggest we could use in small regions to create an artificial magnetosphere in the same way. The problem is on those sorts of scales where you're trying to cover regions, many square kilometers with this technology, you know, you're going to be using up a lot of energy in the process of creating that ionisation. But I know it does work. That's the point. So you don't have to use chemicals to produce rain in certain regions, and if your crops are failing, and you're going to lose your business, you're probably going to pay a company to cloud seed or do some weather modification to, you know, get that precipitation on the needed crops. Otherwise, you're going to go bankrupt. So that's, you know, I just want you to open your mind to these things. These are some of the things that you need to, you know, realistically take on board, guys. Because if the weather's going to start getting knocked about by the magnetosphere weakening and the poles migrating and the solar minimum, then, you know, this might be something that can make things last a little bit longer, even maybe a little bit longer than, you know, just a bit. So, okay, guys, we really could do with some more funding on this channel. You know, we've got an honest fundraiser going here. You know, we're at the anniversary on the 15th of this month of the TriMag system, which has done a fabulous job of tracking the magnetic North Pole. We've now got online a magnetosphere strength, you know, so it's well worth supporting. We are covering on this website, YouTube channel, and with our observatory that we've now got, one of the most important events mankind will ever see. And, you know, with the other little bits of information we're trickling on this YouTube channel, I think it's worth supporting, don't you guys? And I think we can do better than £27. I really do. And I don't doubt that you don't think it's worth it. And, you know, I'm just hoping that more people will see that it's well worth supporting. I've put a lot of work in, guys, over the last 6 years to keep you informed, and I think I've been remarkably right, considering I am just really one guy making his best efforts to inform others of what's going on, because we know these organisations aren't going to come out and tell us. If they do, things will change in our world tomorrow, and that's probably why less than 1% are even aware of the magnetic poles migrating on the Earth. So, you know, guys, the link's there, and you know, at the moment the sun's shining in the UK. If you're in the UK, you know, enjoy your barbecue this weekend. And, you know, I'm going to say what I usually do, guys. You enjoy yourselves. Try not to worry about it. Give some thought about what we've talked about in this video. I think it's time to start really making some decisions and some planning and getting some of your loved ones in on it as well. And, you know, perhaps all of you can do something in a little group that will protect your futures. Okay. I'll say what I usually do. Bye for now.